continue our coverage then tonight. Of course, we now have councils being formed in a number of municipalities, and it follows a couple of weeks of uncertainty. The bickering continues, the horse trading continues. We're joined now by Wayne Sussman, who is an election analyst. And Wayne, always a pleasure to be chatting to you. So last night when we last spoke, we didn't quite have the kind of results that we do today. And certainly a better picture has emerged of the voting patterns. What do you make of it all, Wayne? What is the political strategy, political game being played here?
It was a sensational day yesterday, and that trend has now continued today. We saw that the DA won the mayoral chain in Mogale City, Krugersdorp on the west rand of Gauteng. We saw that the DA were elected unopposed in the city of Tshwane. And what this means is that in the 8 municipalities of Gauteng, the ANC only controls 3 at the moment, that's my understanding. 5 are in the hands of the opposition, and the ANC no longer controls any metros in Gauteng. That is a stunning development. We've got to remember that the ANC marched into these elections controlling Johannesburg with a coalition and controlling Ekurhuleni with a coalition. So this is stunning. And we see these trends play out in Umhlatuze and Richards Bay. The IFP reneged on its agreement to the ANC, and it got the mayorship there. We saw the same in Newcastle. We saw historic events in Metsimaholo and Sasolburg, where the EFF dons the mayoral chain for the first time in its history. So it has been a stunning day. I mean, there are pockets of hope and glimmer for the ANC. In Buffalo City, that process seemed to be fair, and an ANC mayor will be elected without any problem over there. That's a major metro in the Eastern Cape. But it's been a very, very difficult 24 hours. And again, a totally stunning political development. No one knew that the EFF would play these cards yesterday. And though the EFF playing their cards have seen a lot of mayors a lot of mayors starting their day having no idea when they woke up the day before, yesterday morning, that they would wake up as mayors today. And we're going to see the same with the new mayor of Mogale City waking up tomorrow with a new challenge ahead of him. He had no idea that he would be the mayor. So these are fascinating times, Kathy.
That seems to be the general sentiment from these newly elected DA mayors, that they're just as surprised as everybody else. We were in conversation with Mpopalatsi, who's the mayor-elect for Johannesburg, and she was expressing exactly that sentiment. It may feel like Christmas has come early for the DA, but of course we then have, on the sidelines of all of this, analysts, some like yourself, who are watching and saying it might be too soon to celebrate.
Well, I think you've got to celebrate. It's a remarkable achievement for someone like Dr. Mpopalatsi. The week ended last week with people saying that the mayor of Johannesburg will either be Herman Mashaba, coming back for a second term, or to be Mpho Morani, coming back for his second term from the ANC. And today, Dr. Mpopalatsi, who's got a remarkable life story, is the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. So I think she and all other mayors from the ANC, DA, EFF, Patriotic Alliance should celebrate this achievement. It's a remarkable moment for them. We often bicker and are often very critical, but this is a milestone for many of the mayors elected today. However, this is akin to a Black Friday special where we might go wild with our credit card and then wake up the next day and realize that the good times aren't so good. Because the DA is fundamentally beholden to the EFF. This is not a natural bedfellow for the DA. And they will have to walk a very tight rope now. This is uncharted territory. This is very different to 2016. Because even though the EFF didn't sit in a coalition with the DA between 2016 and 2021, there was an informal agreement where the DA knew that if it did certain things, it could count on the EFF support. The DA started its day today with mayors in Ekurhuleni, with mayors in Johannesburg, and also now today Mogale City and Tshwane, Well, Tshwane is slightly different, but with those three, with Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni and Mogale City, they are heavily dependent on the EFF, and there's not even an informal agreement. So the DA has to walk a very tight rope now in the next few months, a very fine line, where they have to manage their supporters' expectations and at the same time make sure that those parties who should help their mayors get elected, giving them small gains and giving them the confidence to pass the budget and to continue allowing the DA to run. Otherwise, it's going to descend into chaos again.
Wayne, let's talk about this issue of dependence, because when you hear what the leadership of the DA says, they certainly don't see it in that way. They don't feel that this situation necessarily forces them to make concessions or even have to enter into any sorts of agreements with the EFF. And in fact, you hear more and more hints towards perhaps reaching out to the ANC to back them up when it comes to the voting. What do you make of that?
I think that's going to be easier said than done. The ANC will be desperate to reclaim some of these metros. Remember, Gauteng is the economic powerhouse of our nation. It's absolutely important for the ANC to do whatever it can to take those back. And in order for the DA to carry on governing these three metros, which is again a stunning development. We sometimes forget what happened a few weeks ago. The DA lost a lot of ground in all three of those metros, yet they find themselves in the mayoral chain today. They find themselves in the mayoral chain because of parties like the EFF, because of parties like Action SA, parties like the Freedom Front. Those three parties have very diverse, very different constituencies and different interests. You're going to have to think very carefully how you govern those metros and those large cities in the next 5 years. Otherwise, you're going to be booted out. So this is very difficult. And just, if I may, make a very quick comment about eThekwini. This is fascinating because I've just looked at the numbers before this interview, and it made such perfect sense for the ANC to have this relationship with the IFP, because their numbers together took the ANC and the IFP over the magical mark, and there was a stable coalition. I've carried on looking at the permutations in the last few minutes while I was waiting for this interview. There are such unstable times ahead for the eThekwini. Even if the ANC takes over, they are going to be in a very difficult position. And if the DA or the IFP or the EFF take over tomorrow, they are also going to be in a difficult position. What a fascinating time to observe politics in our country.
Wayne, you're really telling us about just how nuanced the situation in every municipality is, and really complex situations require complex solutions. Do you think that that level of complexity is coming through in the way that political parties continue to talk about their own approach to what potential coalition governments may need to look like, including even for the DA today that is sitting with this list of mayors that has been unexpected, but still seems to be sticking to a very clear line of we will and we will not in terms of who they work with and who they let into their circle?
I'm going to give you three different examples. In Oudtshoorn, we have an ANC mayor, 24 years old, who got elected last week. I spoke about the EFF mayor elected in Metsimaholo and Sasolburg, and let's speak about the DA in Johannesburg, Dr. Palazzi. They are going to have to show bold leadership over the next few months and years to show that they can reach across party lines, that they can understand what other informal and formal parts of their coalitions want and need. This is politics in 2021 to 2026 is much more complex, much more delicate, much more sophisticated, going to need much more sophisticated understanding and analysis than what we saw between 2016 and 2021. What we do not want to see is a repeat of the chaos and mayhem like we saw in Nelson Mandela Bay, where single-person parties can hold municipalities to ransom and hold back service delivery. And what we don't want is the focus of local government to be on the comedy or the tragedy, rather, the tragedy and the comedy, what we observe in councils, but should rather be about cities, about service delivery in the cities and towns, and solving the problems. It's going to be absolutely key for people, those three people I mentioned. I use the examples of the ANC mayor in Oudtshoorn, the EFF mayor in Sasolburg, and the DA mayor in Johannesburg. They are going to think first about the residents, first about the major legacy challenges facing the crumbling institution in many of our cities and towns, and how they're going to reach across party lines and make sure they leave our towns and cities and municipalities in a better state in 5 years than they find themselves in today.
Elections analyst Wayne Sussman. Of course, the work is not done yet, Wayne, so I will certainly continue to watch these developments as they unfold. Always a pleasure getting your insight.